Hi, this is Swan with Swan Amity Studios, and we are taking a look at making square in a square. Sometimes when we're working with smaller pieces, and this one begins with a piece that is 1 7/8 by 1 7/8, and two squares of background material that are also 1 7/8 by 1 7/8. And working with those smaller pieces can frequently make it hard to produce a perfect square in a square project. In this case, you'll notice, having put it together, we've got some overhang, we've got some wonk down here as well. This looks like it's lining up, but in comparison to all of the other things, we're not going to be able to square to a piece that will end up being 2.5 by 2.5 to go into our quilt project. Here on this side, we're at 2 3/8. On this side, we could square to 2.5, but we would have some weird overhang and we wouldn't quite be a 1/4 inch to the point, nor would we be quite a 1/4 inch to the point on the other side. So we have a unit that would be difficult to use in a larger block. Now, we can always square a little bit too small and ease in the seams to get to those points. And in some cases, I might choose to do that. But in this case, let's talk about how to get one that looks really good to begin with. When I'm working with a square in a square project, starting off appropriately from the center is the trick. If this is our center piece, like the example above, what we will need to do is find the center lines here and here in order to give us a more perfect centering of our two background squares that we're going to be cutting into half square triangle units. We take both of those and split them on the bias so that we have a line from corner to corner. It gives us 4 identical triangles to use for our square in a square units. Now we want to find these center lines. 1 7/8 divided in half does not quite give us a number that we can utilize. So we would, if we wanted to draw those lines, have to gauge right in between 7/8 and 1 and draw a line. Let's go ahead and do that for sake of argument. We would then go ahead and turn our piece and draw another line using the same eyeballing of right in between 7/8 and 1 inch. And you can see probably by the number of times I repositioned very carefully that that's not necessarily easy to do. If you've used the eyeballing method to get halfway here, center line, halfway here, center line, and you're using that to line up your squares, you'll find that does a pretty decent job. Sorry, I said line up triangles, and I said line up squares, and I meant triangles. Here we go. If we line this guy up, and now you'll see his point hits that line that we were creating. This is one way to think about making sure that you are sewing your triangles on the right way. You'll sew on one at a time with this method, one on this side and one on the other side. Press outward towards the background material, turn your piece, and use the same line-up method for your other two triangles. However, you may find that having made those markings with that methodology will be difficult to be exact on the center. The alternative is a simple one. Fold your piece in half and finger press along the side, making sure that you really are lining up your corners. and finger pressing that line straight across. Now, as I open it up, I notice that the marking that I made with my blue marking pen was very close to the center, but not quite. The fold line instead is going to give me a more accurate centering device so that now I really do know that my triangle is lined up right in the center on my little fold line. I'm ready to go ahead and go into the machine and stitch across. I'm going to turn it around and use that same little centering fold to line up my second one. And he looks good. We're going to go back into the machine and stitch 1/4 inch on this side. We can double check if we want to make sure our point is right in the fold and it looks good. We're then going to press towards the background material, towards the background material. Let's take a look at what kind of a little overhang that produces. Notice that as we come back from having pressed, we have these little dog ears on the ends, a little extra space. Before we start attaching or preparing to attach our other triangles, let's trim those little guys off and get them out of our way. To trim in this case, I find it is easier to turn the piece over to the back and trim from the back side. I'm going to be able to see exactly where my green center is in this case and trim right on the edge of my little green center square. A little cleaner than trying to guess where all those things are from the front side. Now that we've got the unit to this stage, we're ready to add the last 2 triangles. But we want to create that second fold. So once again, I'm going to bring corner to corner using my green square as the corner to corner. So I want to line up on this side, I want to line up on this side, and I want to finger press a fold line to use as a centering guide for my last 2 triangles. I'm going to open up and I'm going to use that fold line now to attach my last 2 triangles. Checking to make sure that the point of my triangle is lining up with my center fold line, which was very close to my blue mark. But that fold line is just a little more accurate. You can kind of see how much more accurate because our stitching is lining up right here. Our stitching is lining up right here. That's an excellent indication that we are right in the middle with our triangle. See how we are right on that fold line. Looks good. Let's go ahead and put the second triangle on. I'm just going to push that one out of the way. This is our last one. And we're making sure that we're on the fold line. We're going to go back into the machine and stitch. This one kind of flipped up on me just a little bit. Let's get it back in line. And our stitch line on this side also looks pretty good. A little off on this side, but right in the money on that side. So I think when we open this up, will be a little bit off. I think it slipped while it was in the machine. So this is a great time to go ahead and make a correction. You notice the mistake. Rather than going ahead and pressing, let's take it out and fix it. This is also a great time to mention that sometimes going into the machine, When you're working with a bias edge, something that you have cut from corner to corner, like these little top triangles of background, sometimes helps to have a stiletto handy to stabilize them. Let's go back into the machine that way. Taking a look now, we've taken this guy off. We're going to line him back up and correct our block. Here we go. We're lining back up, point to that centering fold, making sure that we're right on the edge with our bias cut of our triangle. This time I think we're in a much better spot. We were pretty good the first time, but we moved as we went into the machine. So as we come to the machine this time, I'm going to get my stiletto out. I'm going to bring the presser foot down. We're ready to go. Last one always causes a little trouble for me. There we go. And this time I'm going to kind of hold it in place with the stiletto. Just get it to ease through there so that it doesn't shift around on me while we're stitching. As we come out of the machine, lined up better on this side, lined up pretty good on this side as well. Flipping out, I see that we have a much better straight connection. A much better straight connection here as well. Let's press out and see if we did our job. Here's our final square in a square ready to trim down. Comparison. Notice that our edges are lined up on all sides pretty closely versus our original where we have a significant amount of overhang in more than one location. This one, as we test it with our ruler, is going to give us a much better squaring to 2.5 and a much better squaring to 2.5 on this side as well. I'm also checking to see that as I square, I have enough room to come 1/4 of an inch to each one of my points, and I can see that I do. This is a square in a square I'm much happier to put into my block. Whether you decide to very carefully eyeball that centering line, if that helps you, great. And if it helps you to fold, that may seem like it is the less technical version of doing something, but when something works, it works. Tried and true, folding your piece over and getting a great centering line on both sides. This has been Swan with Swan Amity Studios, making square in a square today. Stitch happy, my friends.